Should be going live. You are live. Peace, peace. Abarigani, Islam, Salam, Hetepu, Rahubat, Gino Lako Ninani, Chief Noble Bandele Elamine back in the building. And today's show, I got a special guest, one of my boys from back in the day. He been doing this thing for over the years. I got Amen Maat Ra back in the building today.
Peace and blessings.
Yes, sir. So we gonna get into some good stuff tonight, man. We gonna pick his brain. We gonna talk about some of the misconceptions of the Ankh. That's right, misconceptions of the Ankh. So before we get into that, please like this video. Please share this video. Subscribe to the channel. All right. And before we do that, I'm gonna show a quick ad real quick. All right. So let me show this ad and we get started.
Yes, knowledge is for the people. Get your books today on indigenousmoors.org. Your one-stop shop for indigenous needs.
All right. And you can check out my books and Amen Maat Ra books on indigenous.moors.org. All right. So we got all our books on there. And also we've got Brother Abdullah books added to the scene too. So y'all can check out those books as well. So we got my brother Amen Maat Ra in the building, man. How you been, man?
Doing well, as my power cord falls out. But all is well.
Yeah,
been a long time.
Sorry, y'all. We had a little technical difficulties, but we making sure we here tonight.
Right.
Like I said, we talked about this. We was talking about some of the things that's going on in the community, especially with a lot of the information. A lot of information is being spread, but not the true information. It's like a very surface level understanding of things, right? So a lot of the things that we've been discussing is like a lot of the things going on in the African-centered movement or the conscious community. A lot of things that they're learning and being taught is not quite precise. And so my brother Amen Maat Ra has been studying. He's an author of many books. Matter of fact, let me see if I can share my screen real quick. I'm gonna show you some of his books right here. You can check out his books on Amazon. He's got the Amen Ra Illumination Volume 1. This is one that's good because it's focusing on honoring the ancestors, which, you know, as far as our temple, that's one of the things that we're about is honoring our ancestors. Ashe. So he's got the ancestors surround us, African philosophy and methodology, the Roman illusion. One, that's the classic one right here. Explores the African origins of Christianity. The Amen Ra Illumination 2. He got the Roman. He got 1 and 2. The Roman Illusion Volume 2 and Volume 3. So, I mean, my man, he got some books, man. So, you know, we want to pick his brain tonight, dealing with the Ankh, because the Ankh is a very popular symbol in the conscious community. I got several Ankhs. You know, that's just one of the things that we rock. But do we really understand what the Ankh is? So, you know, I'm gonna let my brother get into his spiel, and I'm gonna jump in when I can.
Now, just briefly, on the books, if you glide down to Amen Ra Illumination Volume 2, that's the actual book of focus that we'll be speaking on.
Okay.
Right there. So, you know, as you know, it's been a while. You know, been on a hiatus and everything, relaxing, unwinding. Sometimes you can have academic overload, like it's just so much information and everything that you got to take a step back to observe. But I wanted to revisit this text because I've had a lot of messages and good discussions about the Ankh and various spiritual systems and different teachers that speak and teach on the spiritual system of Kemet that have adopted various beliefs and interpretations of the Ankh and different symbols in Kemet that are not grounded in what the actual Remech, which is the term for ancient Egyptians. That's the actual title that they chose for themselves. Their own title was the Remech. And these are some of the attestations that they left of their symbols, their signs, their outlooks and everything. And a lot of times it gets glared over and overlooked because you have a lot of instances where, although you have a lot of great teachers that really love Kemet, they want to bring something positive back to the community, but in many instances, there's not a fundamental understanding of how to read, write, and translate the actual Sesh Medu Neter script of Kemet itself, which is the writing script. So for this presentation, since it's been a while, just to share with the family, I wanted to just, verbatim take some few notes and highlights out of my book, because the Ankh symbol is so important that the first 2 chapters of this book are dedicated to the various definitions and expressions of Ankh that you'll see in the actual lexicon of Kemet within their extensive vocabulary or whatever. So to begin with, we'll go here. Let's see here.
Y'all please like the video. Please, if y'all in the building, like the video, share. Share.
So what we're dealing with is chapter 2, Breath of the Neteru, which in Kemet, Neteru is the term that they use for their forces of nature or their deities. In your Abrahamic faith, some would compare them to angels.
Would that be the Elohim?
Yes.
Would it be the Elohim?
You would have, you're right, the Elohim. In the Kabbalah, they're referred to as the Sephiroth. So you see the similar concepts through different religious faiths and everything across the world. So a popular and also false claim about the definition, because there are many definitions of the Ankh, but this is a topic that I really wanted to speak on just from the direct feedback I've received from a lot of inboxes and things of this nature. So a popular false claim about the definition of the Ankh symbol is that it represents a combination of a male's penis and testicles and a female's womb, which includes the vagina, the ovaries, the fallopian tube, etc. All of these assertions are absolutely false, and they are not grounded in scholarship or any supportive primary text that can actually be found in Kemet. So when we talk about the claims of the actual Ankh symbol corresponding to the actual human anatomy, the reproductive organs of a male and the reproductive organs of a female intertwined in one symbol, that is a concept. We find no notions of this carved on any stela, monuments, major temples, or papyri throughout Kemet. All of these. So what we're dealing with is assertions that are just they're false. There's no grounding or any supportive primary text. We must always remember the scholarly fact that the word for any hieroglyph can be and often is separate from the symbol itself. I must repeat this again. We must always remember the fact that the word for any hieroglyph can be, often is, and is separate from the symbol itself. So the symbol you see and the actual term are not always mutually exclusive and equate to the same thing. When you get into Sesh Medu Neter, 1 + 1 does not always guarantee 2. The math changes. So the Ankh for starters, when we talk about the Ankh symbol, we all know what the famous Ankh symbol is. The Ankh symbol itself is not a depiction of a man's penis nor a woman's womb. The Ankh historically is just a simplified depiction of the human body with the base as the spinal cord and a horizontal bar as the shoulders and arms spread out. More specific, the Ankh is a human and animal thoracic complex. Now, in an earlier chapter, I go over this, how human anatomy, medical science played a major role in the development of the symbol that you call the Ankh. Because first and foremost, I'm backtracking. The people of Kemet had an intimate connection with cattle herding. That was an important occupation in Kemet that drew a lot of revenue, and you could feed and sustain a family with that. So the Medu Neter term Shenet, it means sacred cattle. So there were tons of sacred terms for cattle and how important they were in the everyday lives of Kemet or whatever. So in part, ritual cattle sacrifices to venerate essential spiritual aspects of nature, deities meaning Neteru, and ancestors in Kemet led to a fundamental understanding of animal anatomy, physiology, which was then applied to humans. So some of the medical advancements that we see in Kemet, all of this advanced knowledge had its roots in animal sacrifice for rituals that later led into, branched out also with veterinary science. So it's important to remember that Kemet's establishment of scientific healing systems developed for human medicine, it benefited greatly from veterinary medicine, and great examples can be found. If you want to fact check this and get way more deeper than this presentation allowed me to for, just the time slot we have, you really need to take out the time and research the Calhoun Veterinary Papyrus. That's spelled Kahun Veterinary Papyrus. So what we find is when we go into various papyri like the Calhoun papyri, and we see the years and years of medical science research dissecting things of this nature, the Ankh symbol is derived from the scientific anatomical observations of the thoracic region of animals and humans. The forms of a physician's technical jargon in Kemet were also developed in veterinary medicine. So a lot of terms that you see the doctors use in Kemet were derived from veterinarian terms. And even when you see it spelled in Medu Neter, you see glyphs with animal references, even though you're looking at anatomical terms. Animal body parts and numerous animals found throughout nature are directly incorporated into Sesh Medu Neter writing script, and many of the symbols used for human organs are indeed animal organs. So as a good example, and then we'll start getting into pictures and everything, you have, if you look up the F3 ox heart glyph, it's used to depict a human heart. So when you see the word Ib spelled for human, you see the heart of it. It's not a human heart. It's the larger heart of an ox or whatever. So, with that saying, let's see. So when we talk about the thoracic region, this is what I'm talking about. Here we go to an image of the human thoracic region, your upper chest region, upper and lower chest region. And here you see it compared to an ancient Egyptian Ankh or whatever from Kemet. Now, when we look at the human anatomy, it's because of the angles we take and look at. If you, in my book, I show aerial views of the human clavicle, and you can actually see the Ankh. If you were to remove the head and the vertebrae from the neck to the collar cross, if you were to remove the head and then look at it from an aerial view, you would surely indeed see the actual inspiration for your Ankh symbol. And you see this reiterated here with this actual artifact, with the Ankh, and what you see here going through it is a Wa scepter and a Jed pillar.
Right. So, so let me ask you this, because from what we was taught, the word Ankh means life.
Yes, that's one definition of Ankh. But in reference to life and what we call the spirit, we have to look that the primary definition of the term, when we look at the etymology of it, is based in the term aspire, which means to breathe. It's the act of respiration. So we say the word so in Kemet, one of the terms for thorax, your breast, or the chest in Kemet is kabat. Now the word for thorax in the Yoruba language is aya. Now the primary function of the thorax is the process of respiration and to continually provide a human being with the breath of life. The scholar and many linguists, have went over this and everything with the linguistic connections between the Ankh and the breath of life and everything. The ribs and so we have to remember, like I said, the physical object that inspired the creation of the hieroglyphic symbol for the Ankh, like I said, is indeed a thoracic complex. And other animals, like I said, cattle. So the thorax is sometimes referred to as the breastplate. The chest is a region of the body between the neck and the abdomen. So the reason why the Ankh has been so hard to pin down what the shape is, because we never took the time to look at it from a scientific, in particular, a medical view.
I hear you. We've always looked at it from a spiritual.
Yeah, it was always strictly spiritual. But first and foremost, the foundation of Kemet rests in science, in engineering, and being able to provide food, clothing, shelter, and medical provision for their citizens. So in order to be spiritual, you first have to have, the foundation of life. You have to have that food, clothing, and shelter. But indeed, when we say the word spirit in English, its foundation, its basis is literally in the term to breathe.
Okay. Interesting. So, so really, when we look at it from an African center, like the Afrocentric or conscious community, we tend to look at it from a spiritual, but you're really showing us the practical,
right?
The practical use of the symbol. Very interesting. So y'all check that.
So now let's see, to give some more sources, let's see here. Schwabe is a researcher. This level of scholarship is a well-documented. Andrew Hunt Gordon and Calvin W. Schwabe, they've done a lot of research on Kemet, their medical practitioners, and all the rigorous, in-depth research they did with veterinary science, dissecting animals, the diagrams that they made, the anatomical charts and everything.
So that's interesting. So the Ankh is so you saying to me, you telling me that the Ankh is more dealing with medical, or not more, but a lot of what the Ankh has to deal with is dealing with the medical, particularly from animals.
Yes. I don't have to go through. Let's see. I'll go through some pictures. Just see here, 86, because it's going to be important. Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yeah. You all on it.
Now, to go in deeper, remember how I said the Ankh is corresponds to your thorax? If you actually look at the term Sina in Kemet, or I should say Shina, is your breast, your thorax, your upper body. Now, the term Shina means breast, and it's also your thorax, and it's simply just the inverse, meaning the reverse spelling. You know how even today in African American culture, you'll see people named Samaj, which is James spelled backwards. Well, Ankh spelled backwards is Shina in its respective dialectal variants, because just like how among African Americans we have different dialects, in the Midwest we have a specific dialect that we recognize, as opposed to somebody that was traditionally born and raised in the deep South. So it's simply just the inverse of the word Ankh. So
Okay.
the H and the S, they interchange in Kemet. So sometimes when you see the sh sound, you'll be fooled into thinking it's something else. It's just a particular dialect, whether it be upper or lower Kemet, how they pronounce certain words or whatever, that different inflection that they put on their words that's peculiar to that particular region of Kemet. So the physical
So what
object.
region? Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh,
I ain't gonna stop.
so because the word for thorax and the word for life are pronounced the same in Kemet, we use the thorax sign to write for the word life in Kemet, which is the Ankh. And that's why when you go into your medical text, and if you're very new to translating, you'll say, why does this word Ankh keep coming up? And the word Ankh is a medical term too for your thorax. But then when you step outside of your medical papyrus, such as your Calhoun papyruses and your whole body of veterinarian papyruses that you can find under looking at the Calhoun papyrus or whatever, you see the difference. With the minute you step out of the medical field, it's just like how we have the Black's Law Dictionary. You have traditional language that you use for everyday people, and then you have legalese, which has different implications. So that's what we're dealing with here with the symbol of the Ankh. What I'm trying to share with the community and with the family is the Black's Law Dictionary of the Ankh. So we can get into the foundation and understand what our ancestors were really trying to convey to us when they use these symbols. So the symbol is used to write the word Ankh. Also mirror, it could also mean captive, because that same Ankh can be used to use the mirror, which is the ritual mirrors that you see your pharaohs holding. I get into that deeper into the
Okay. Yeah. You gotta get into that, bro.
so it's a long exploration, because although I'm getting slightly off the subject, I just want people to know that Amen Ra Illumination Volume 2 is research that was presented with good debates that people wanted to know, and my actual love and passion to unlearn what deep in my heart I knew wasn't right. Because we have to remember that a lot of our spiritual teachers, they have to pay bills, they have to pay rent just like we do. And often, if what you're teaching is not sensational, if it's not catching, if it's not as exciting as what's on Netflix, people tend to get bored. So often things that get blown out of proportion, over exaggerated, and then the teachings turn into almost like an episode of Star Wars or Star Trek. It's just so much science fiction that watered down what our ancestors thought was valuable.
Shay,
So,
Shay. So that's now. Me and you was talking about this stuff. We talked about like what you were gonna do this video on, but you didn't. I didn't know. Like you didn't tell me the nook and the cranny of this. So this is kind of new to me as well, y'all. Like what he's sharing with me is kind of new to me, because I was under the same conception of everybody else when we talk about the Ankh. So yeah,
so I'm gonna take
it's
it.
deep.
I appreciate that. I'm gonna take another step further. Now, to further illustrate how we can easily demonstrate the connection of the Ankh with respiration, we will defer to the actual hieroglyphic sign list of the Seshmetu Neter language. Now, if you go by your gardener's list, you type in D19 glyph, and you'll see the nose, eye, and cheek glyph, which denotes a region of the body that is associated with the breath. So this particular glyph, can you see that glyph?
Yeah.
Is it with the face glyph and how it shows that particular region terminating right at the nose? This is associated with the breath. So when sacred objects are aligned with this region of the body, it can serve as a good indicator of what concept the object is actually highlighting. In most instances, the underlying definition of the Ankh is made crystal clear and always reinforced by the anatomical region of the body it is pointed at when it is held by a deity or a human being. Let me repeat that again.
Yeah. So what are they saying? Yeah, break that down.
If you want to
Explain
know
that.
the definition of Ankh, whenever you see it in magical or ceremonial depictions, they will tell you specifically what that Ankh means by pointing at the region of the body it's meant to represent. So we always have to keep that in mind, that the deity, when you see a deity holding the Ankh, wherever they're placing that Ankh, that's what that's an indicator of something. That's a region that they're highlighting. It's like using a highlight marker. Now,
Okay.
when we meditate on the Ankh on one level, we can visualize a Sesh Medu Neter term that highlights the breathing process, like the word sin. And here, that word means to smell perfume, breathe air, kiss. It has multiple definitions that you see. Now, in the study of history, as an academic discipline, a primary source, also called an original source or original evidence, is an authentic artifact, document, manuscript, a diary, an autobiography, recording, oral histories, or any source of information that was created at that time under study. It serves as a first-hand account of the original source of information about the topic, events, practices, and conditions you are researching. The most useful primary sources are usually considered to be those that were created closest to the actual time period you're researching. So I'm working up to something here.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, when I say the Ankh represents, and now I'm gonna get into the other topic in a minute. I just have to build on this because I'm skipping over chapters. So here we're gonna show and prove the Ankh represents the vital respiration process and is held near the mouth and nose of divinities. So we'll start with Sebek.
Okay.
Here, if you see right here, here's in Medu Neter vertically down. Here you see Sebek right here. His name's spelled out right here. See the Seb right here, and this is his perch right here he sits on. It's often hard to translate because some of these glyphs get all beat up, battered, and there's so many different ways to spell Sebek, it can throw you off. But here we see Sebek with his solar crown. He's seated and rested, just to show you the full throne on his base.
Right.
And notice the Ankh is up to his nose and mouth. Nose and mouth.
Okay.
Here I see that. Remember that face glyph I just told you about with Breed? Here we go.
Yeah.
That face glyph.
Oh shit.
Almost like a hand guiding you. Say, pay attention to this.
You get into it now, bro. You get into it now.
We're gonna line this up so I can prove a deeper point later. But sometimes it's got a slow.
So okay, hold on. So back when you said it highlight, like the Ankh is sort of like a highlighter of what it's trying to demonstrate convey to. So it's conveying, it's highlighted to the mouth and on Sebek. So okay, I see. Go ahead. I'm just checking with you.
Oh yeah, no doubt. So we're gonna go through some source because I'm having an art background and everything. I love to have illustrated text and show a lot of rich primaries. So when I speak, people can see what was created at that particular time by our ancestors, as opposed to you going by what I say. You shouldn't believe anything I say. Everything I say, you should go back, research it, try to find primary sources, try to find temple carvings and everything, so you can further your understanding and your passion for traditional African spiritual systems. So we're going to go to our next image because we're highlighting here and we're showing the glyphs with the stone temple monuments. So next, we're going to go here. The Ankh represents respiration and is held near the mouth and nose of the ancestors so they may breathe righteously in the spirit realm. Let's go after this. So let's look at what our goddesses are. Goddess in Kemet is a Neteret. Now let's look at what our great Black African goddess. Here we see the pharaoh, the Nesut Biti. Notice where that Ankh is again.
Check.
Here is the focus. The goddess is speaking. Just like with the glyph work, let's go back under here. Let's go back after this. See the face, and it's almost like there's a hand under here guiding you to what to. So we go to this next glyph, and just like here, you see her hand, and it's guiding you to this region.
Yes.
So here, see, we go again. Kenem, breathe air, smell odors, make sweet smelling. And see, we see the focus if you see the determinative here, if you look to the far right, this is called a determinative glyph. Now it's called a classifier glyph, meaning it reinforces what this term means. If you should take it as a medical term, a legal term, a scientific term, or a spiritual term. So here you see the seated man determinative with his hand pointed to his mouth. And here we go again. So again, we're reinforcing this. So now the spirit is identified with the breath among African languages related to Medu Neter. So now it's important to show some of the living languages in Africa that still directly carry on the traditions of Kemet. They have the language in most parts, much of the cultural traditions, spiritual traditions. When I use the term religion, I mean it in an organized fashion, because a lot of times when we hear the word religion, it's demonized because we think of the Abrahamic faith. But when I use religion, I use it as a reference to an organized spiritual system that has checks and balances. You're not just going in Kemet making up stuff and having it show. You don't go into the Temple set and say, we're going to do it my way because I watched a YouTube video for 3 minutes and such said this, so we're going to rewrite history. No, that's not how it works. Religion, you're right. So we have to get this understanding, especially, you know, in MoorishNewKemit or whatever. So as we go down, I wanted to cover some terms in Kemet that are the exact same. So in Middle Egyptian, we have because again, spirit is a reference to breath. Thanks, babe. So we have breathe in. In Yoruba, we have Emi. So instead of we have Emi. We also have Emi, breath. Yoruba mi. In Igbo, it's Muao, spirit. Amongst the Ga people, which is another language. So all of these tribes that I'm naming here with comparative linguistics, these have been tested, proven, and demonstrated by our great scholars such as Sheikh Anta Diop and such to be indeed genetically related terms that have been handed down from Kemet. And they're the exact same terms, but they're spoken in different Kemetic dialects. So in Chaluba, we said this. So on a simplistic level, you know, of course, if you're alive and breathing, you are indeed spiritual. However, this is just a technical definition. The word from its inception was used to mean an animating force. Thus, spirit equates to energy, a power, which is a foundational principle in traditional African spirituality and in magical conjurations. So the suffix ity, ity, means state of. The al or ual suffix, like usual, means of or pertaining to. Thus, spirituality has to deal with being in a state of that which pertains to spirit. So when a discussion is conducted about religious concepts, spirituality, entities, and all of this stuff like that, it can be drastically altered from a technical, scientific matter that can be measured or tested and everything. So now we want to go here. Let's see here. Where's the next page? So this is where I wanted to show the etymology of spirit. So the etymology of the English word spirit, as I was saying, corresponds to respiration in the thoracic region. So I wanted to show in the etymology, we can see the Latin. We go right here. We see spare, which means to breathe. Latin, spiritus, breath, spirit. Anglo-Norman French, spirit.
Check.
So I just wanted to go through and reinforce this before I get into the primary points. So,
okay, my brother. Okay,
we're working in. I'm getting warmed up. I just want to share.
Yeah. I hear you get warmed up, brother. Yeah, it's coming back. I told you.
We're about to hit escape velocity in a minute. So there are 3 primary ways in which the Ankh is depicted. 1, a goddess. In Kemet is called a Neteret, or a god, a Neter, holding the Ankh in their hands, usually by the loop or the handle. Another famous depiction is that of the gods, the Neteru, purifying a priest, queen, or king by anointing that person with the living force, represented by the Ankh symbol. The third depiction is of the gods holding the Ankh to the nose or mouth. So we're going to go up here again. So we can show all the emphasis. Here we go again with the mouth or whatever.
Right. Okay, now hold on. Now go back a little bit. Go back to that picture. So I often see in Egyptian or Kemetic talk, they're holding the Ankh like that, like on the other picture. So what is that when they're just holding it like that? Like
That is
in her hand.
Yeah. Oh, now this is deep. This goes into the creed and nationality principles of MoorishNewKemit. Now, in the first chapter, I show all the glyph work, and I get deep into this. Goes into the initiatic. This is the variation where Ankh also means a living person. The term Ankh, and I have to go through the glyph work, also means a person that is initiated into the wisdom traditions, the vitality of life, a master of self. So when you see that Ankh, what you're talking about now is a person that has good moral character, that has a presence in the community. That's a status symbol. When you see that Ankh held like that, that's letting you know that the person is righteous. So as
Check. Go ahead, get into this. This is deep.
Now we're about to get into the major claim of this discussion. Now, like as I said, we were chopping up. We could literally do a 4-part series about the primary definitions of the Ankh, me showing the actual glyph work, the temple carvings, the actual priests, the goddesses, and running through it. I just wanted to give a real good sample of the people to show, what we're representing, what our passions are. So this leads us up to the primary focal point of this discussion, or a very important misconception that people make about the Ankh constantly. And it's a misunderstanding that has been repeated so much that people believe it to be true. So in reference to the invalid layman claim of the Ankh representing a penis and a vagina, there are absolutely no supporting texts written in MoorishNewKemit writing to validate the claim. Despite the very striking similarities of the shape of the Ankh and the human reproductive organs, there are no authentic temple carvings, artistic depictions, or papyri with a deity or human figure holding an Ankh or pointing an Ankh in the region of a woman's vagina or a man's penis. So nowhere from the Old Kingdom to the 25th dynasty, where you see these major influxes of Europeans, do you see an Ankh ever depicted being held near a woman's womb or a man's genitals. There are also no depictions of a human figure or a deity pointing the Ankh toward a pregnant woman's womb that has corresponding text written to it in MoorishNewKemit to that image that can substantiate a theory of the Ankh symbolically representing a penis, vagina, womb, or a secret technology that produces energy. Because a lot of times there's also a theory that's been put out to the community that the Ankh represents electromagnetic energy, and that in Kemet they had electricity and things of this nature. These again are I deal with that in the other, like the first 2 chapters of this book are dealing with the Ankh.
You say they weren't doing that?
Oh,
is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I got a whole section dedicated to the book, the Ankh, the African origins of electromagnetism and all things of this nature. And like I said,
what was that book? Hey, there was a book called that, right?
Yeah, I own it. It inspired me. It was an inspirational text.
Yeah, it was.
But he sensationalized the information.
Yeah, it did. I hear you. So, do you feel like anything in that book was like, did he have any real?
He had some information. I would have to go back. I have the text. I'd have to go back into my collection, and because at the time or whatever. But yeah, there are some Jews. I highlighted it too. I had to go through it and look at my highlighted parts or whatever of what I like. So now in the MoorishNewKemit writing script, and we're gonna go through this. Hold on, let's see here. Let me line this up, because again, the Ankh, that the focal point of this discussion is the Ankh does not correspond to the womb and the penis. So now the first thing we do whenever we want to try to validate a point or a theory or speculation we have, you first and foremost take out the time, go through the script and see how it's written. What determinatives and classifiers are used to spell these terms. So what we're going to do now is let's go over some terms. So let's deal with the male human anatomy. In the Session Medu writing script, the word for penis is beja. And if you look at the top, you'll see a man's phallus, and under it is a piece of flesh or whatever. That's symbolic. If you notice, we go to the next spelling, henna. This is penis. This is a reference to a circumcised penis, because again, we see circumcision begin in Kemet. And we have to remember, in our traditional African cultures, there was no shame in the human anatomy. There was no shame. There was no perversion attached to discussing reproductive organs or whatever. So here we see the word for sperm, matut. And you see it here again spelled. Begatter, which is watat. And then we have rek. If you notice in all of these spellings, you see no Ankh feature in the spelling for the primary terms for a male's reproductive organ, circumcised penis, and this is deep. I have another text about this on when we look. Now I'm getting ahead of myself, but bear with me. Now, when we look at this, pay attention to the word for sperm, matut, and the philosophy, the spiritual, and the moral ethical system of Kemet. Anytime you deal with the word for sperm and it's not for procreation with a biological female, do you know what the word means?
No.
It means poison, death.
What?
Oh, we're going to do a lecture about that. When the word matut is not spelled with the intent for reproduction of a biological male and a biological female that leads about to the reproduction of children and the continuation of a nation, when you spell that same word and take out the reference to reproduction, it means poison. And we're going to get into that with the tale of Haru and Set and the accounts of some of those sexual allegations they made or whatever.
Wow.
And it should also be noticed that the account of, from what I've been noticing, Haru and Set, it's not even a literal account. It's actually cataloged as essentially a raunchy satire. It's a play, almost like Tyler Perry. So even when we hear the mythology of Haru and Set or whatever, it's more of a playwright.
Oh wow.
It's more of a playwright that we shouldn't take literal that they were literally doing that.
Right. I got you. Check. I'll say.
So let's see here.
Y'all like this video. My fault. Go ahead. Like the video, subscribe, y'all. Go ahead.
So note that all of these terms associated with the male genitalia clearly feature the D5-2, the penis glyph, or the D5-3 glyph depicted as such with the for reproduction, and you won't see an Ankh symbol. Now to go a step further, now we're going to deal with some primary medical terms for women's anatomy. When we look at the term ka, here means vagina or private parts. The term sepet, here we see here, means lip or the mouth of the vagina, the vaginal lips. The word for womb, vulva, uterus, is adet, and it is spelled with the F5-1 piece of flesh glyph and F4-5 uterus glyph, which can accident. We're going to get into this. This is where the misconception comes, and we're going to go over this. The idet, this F5-1 classified glyph, the piece right here, the F4-5 uterus glyph, this is often mistaken, especially when you're studying monuments, temple carvings. Oftentimes, the primary source material that you're trying to get off the temple wall has been eroded badly. Pieces have been chipped off. There's a phenomenon called, if you're doing archaeological excavations, it's called a palimpsest. A palimpsest is when you go into a temple and say like you have a temple and it's been renovated by 3 pharaohs. I'm pharaoh number 1. We'll keep it simple. I'm pharaoh number 1. Brother Ben, you're pharaoh number 2. When you come in over my reign, there may be some parts of my reign that you weren't impressed with. So you would come in and paint over some of my attestations, some of my information that I've left. And it's almost like just literally putting a whole coat of mud and putting a new set of glyphs over it. And sometimes what you wrote can chip off or erode or break off. And what you see is some of your information overlaid on my information, and it can give you the illusion of a different glyph. And this happens all the time. This happens to the best of us on a daily basis when you're dealing with eroded monuments and things of this nature and learning the culture and the traditions of the Nisut Biti, the pharaoh, the ruler, the king of the land, and what they did when they came in and took over another Nesut Biti, even if it was their family member. So again, it can easily be mistaken for an S34 Ankh symbol by someone that's unfamiliar with Melanated or beginner learners of the language. The term Matut Remech means placenta. Other terms for vulva, vagina, are shed. And the word winu could also, if I'm not mistaken, also mean to be pregnant. So I think I've seen primary source, I think in later dynasties. I know for sure in the Middle Kingdom that it also could mean a woman with child. We have just clearly demonstrated that absolutely none of the actual words for penis, semen, vagina, womb, copulation, or begetter in the language of Kemet feature the hieroglyphic symbol of an Ankh in the spelling. So let's go down here because I like to show diagrams to people who haven't done that or done or so here let's take a look at that. You see this? The Ankh is not a womb. See how close the symbol are. Now if you're dealing with an old temple carving, a faded distressed papyrus, and this gets knocked out or there's a bleed and the paint goes over it or it distorts, it often looks like this. It almost looks like a beheaded Ankh. But when you talk about the womb, this is the primary symbol for women for thousands of years. You're going to find this. So people unfamiliar with the Seshmetu natural language, they constantly do this. These two, for some reason, cause a lot of confusion. I don't know why, but I noticed that a lot of our older teachers, many of them cannot read, write, or translate Medu Neter, and on top of that, they do not understand the development, the synthesis, and the mutations of the language from the old kingdom to the new kingdom, especially as you start seeing the Asiatics, the Europeans coming in, interjecting their worldviews into Seshmetu Neter and adding extra glyphs and expanding it so far that's why you need these multiple Medu Neter dictionaries to keep account of all of the various rulers that came in and expanded the language based off of their Eurocentric purview.
Let me ask you this. How does the Egyptologist play into that? Like, do they have anything to do with the understanding of that or not?
I would say from what I've seen, a lot of this comes from New Age religious groups that are formed.
Okay.
Because many of the Egyptologists, like when you see their intellectual fallacies, it's usually along racial lines and trying to claim that, you know, Europeans were the original North Africans and Nile Valley, things along that. And that's where it gets reckless and messy with Egyptologists when they do that. But often I found this particular problem of misrepresenting the Ankh amongst New Age religious followers, because they come with a European purview that is overly sexualized. And some of this comes from the quote unquote, I have another text showing the real from fake of what we call our hermetic teachings, your the 7 hermetic principles. Everything has gender, everything has vibration, correspondence. Everything doesn't have gender. And in the system, the spiritual system of Kemet, that is always reinforced, because when we see the first attestations, when we get into like the 2nd, 3rd dynasty attestations of the solar deity Aten, it specifically states that this being, this entity, was born of its own volition, with no gender, with no name, with no identity. And we have these classifiers to try to approximate what this particular force of nature is. But this particular force of nature has never been engendered. But when it expresses itself and we can detect it in science, if it's fiery like an electromagnetic force, we may say that it's masculine, just in the vocabulary, not saying that it's. I get into that, and when I break down the actual language of grammatical gender versus real gender. See, in the language of Kemet, there are 2 genders going on. There's grammatical gender of you and I as biological males versus a woman, and then there's the other gender, which is grammatical. I mean, the implied gender, to stay
Right.
in agreement with grammar. So sometimes it's crazy the way the language works out. There are instances where what you think is a feminine term is still the hieroglyph for a feminine term, but it has a different application when the grammar changes, meaning that the loaf of bread glyph is also often associated with the feminine T. Like when you see offset at the end, you'll see a little loaf glyph or whatever. But that glyph, when you change it grammatically, can also be a reference to something totally different than just female gender or whatever.
I got you.
Interesting. You know, that's a whole nother presentation I tackle. So and it's spelled with the glyph. Let's see here.
So I got what you're saying though. So the glyph, like the symbol for the womb, doesn't look like it. It doesn't look anything like the Ankh.
No.
Even the stemming on it, like, you know, they talk about the phallus part, the part that's straight down. That part that's straight down is the phallus. Well, you got the womb, the vagina over here, or the fallopian tubes with the straight line going down. It has nothing to do with the penis
at all. And when
right.
references are made for the penis, they have specific glyphs that are actual anatomically correct representations of a human penis. And with the womb, that you often see, like as we go into this text, especially like when you deal with the vagina and things of this nature, you'll also see this piece of flesh glyph. As I hear that.
So what is that?
It's a torn off piece of flesh.
I mean, so what is? Why are they putting that? Why is that piece of flesh important? Like, what is that?
Oh, great question. Oh my God, you taking me back to a whole nother chapter. Now, when you look at these pieces of flesh, if I were to take 3 of those, line those up, and put a Ankh to the left of it, 3 pieces of flesh, you know what I would have? That's the spelling of the word for Ankh, meaning a human being that is of great moral stature, that is a scholar and a pillar of the community. So
interesting.
Often when we see that flesh, when you spell the word, I got another text in the methodology text, when I get into how you put together traditional African rituals or whatever, and the key signs and symbols used in quote unquote Egyptian magic or whatever, I show what that means. So often when you spell the word nature and you incorporate those multiple pieces of flesh, that can mean a human being who has lived and exuded a life that is comparable to what an ancestor is. So often those pieces of flesh usually reiterate, if you're dealing with an abstract concept that could have multiple meanings, what it does when you use it in its proper context, it grounds you to a concept that a human being embodies.
Okay.
So I would have to go back to my text. Let's see. Let me look through my. I'm glad you asked that. Let me go
That's
back and see to demonstrate in Melanated. But yes, that was a great question. Let's see here.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm just like, well, you know, you're talking about these pieces of flesh, and they got to mean something. So, you know, when you put it with the Ankh, you saying that it has, like, if you put it, you saying when you put it 3 pieces of flesh with the Ankh.
I'm sorry, it's nature. With nature, it could be a living place. That would take me to another book.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
you
looking
good.
for it now. Yeah, with nature, instead of like a deity or whatever, it lets you know that you're talking about a living incarnation, someone that has a great character. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
If I'm not mistaken, I think I deal with that in my last book, Research and Methodology. If I'm not mistaken, because I get into some primary spiritual rituals and traditions that you see in Kemet and that are also carried in the Yoruba and Ifa, in Voodoo, what we see in our brothers and sisters practicing the various iterations of Voodoo, whether it be here or in the islands or whatever.
So let me ask,
things of that nature.
So let me ask you this too: is the Ankh symbol just in the Nile Valley region?
No.
Or do you find the Ankh like in West Africa or South Africa? Okay.
We find them in all. We found accounts in West Africa. We find Ankhs. We most certainly find Ankhs amongst what are called Hogans, which are your traditional spiritual healers in South Africa. We find many of Hogans that carry on the oral tradition. Many of your Hogans and your traditional healers in South Africa will actually argue that the Ankh originated in South Africa. So there's a lot of arguments of our brothers and sisters, because we know about the love of Kemet with, cattle herding and all of that stuff. And, I got into how cattle herding, then doing ritual sacrifices to deity of cattle, and then later dissecting better led to the inspiration for your Ankh. So when you look at that Ankh, like I said, it's the thorax, but you're looking at a symbol of sacrifice dedicated to the ancestors and balancing nature, and you're also dealing with the other implications. So just it's our ancestors are amazing. The way we put our language together, the way we wrote our language, they truly, in Kemet, in Nile Valley, in African languages, you truly understand and see that spelling is magic. You're literally spelling. And I love this language because the visualizations that it gives and how it reinforces it, it's just amazing.
I say it is, man. It is. It's so. I mean, y'all. Hey, this has been kind of enlightening to me, man. I mean, understanding the Ankh is enlightening. This is enlightening, for sure. Yes, sir.
So
like I said, y'all thumbs up in the building. If y'all in there, please thumbs up, like this video. Let's okay, and keep it going, man. You doing good, man. Like this is you going deep, man. And for ancient Kemetic people, for the conscious community, this is much needed to upgrade them from the level that we was at in the 70s, for sure.
True. Because it's like, it's an issue because, when we look at these false and unsubstantiated notions of the Ankh of Kemet being a stylized artistic representation of a woman's womb and a male reproduction organ, this was promoted by a lot of misinformed spiritual practitioners. You have a lot of occult authors too. You do have a lot of European occult authors, And a lot of them were coming out of, you had some followers coming out of Aleister Crowley, Madame Blavatsky, things of this nature. And what you see with Madame Blavatsky's works, that her secret doctrines, these are people that were pillars and the foundations of the New Age religious movement. And they focus on engendering everything and things of this nature. And those were teachings what was it? What did Madame Blavatsky, the book of Isis, or what was that book she wrote? She wrote
Isis Unveiled or something
Isis
like that?
Unveiled, yes. And Isis Unveiled, you see notions. This is in the early 1900s and everything. So you see these notions first infused by New Age religious authors such as her and everything. And they have a disturbing and a very immature proclivity to over-sexualize and systematically reducing all Black, African, and ancient Kemetic cultural signs and misunderstood scientific symbols to meager representations of male and female genitalia. So whatever the European could not understand, he reduced it to something sexualized. Because it wasn't in their genetic database to look at something from a purely scientific, analytical, a rational, sober, balanced perspective. It comes from a place. I've noticed that most of their translations and interpretations come from the lower self. It's a very carnal, animalistic outlook. It's very minimalist. It limits everything to their unique and disturbing psychosexual outlook of life. And they force that on us.
Okay. So what you're saying is that the conscious community's basis for their understanding is coming out of the carnal European interpretation of the Ankh.
Yes.
Is that what you're
saying? And one more, furthermore, the Ankh does not correspond to the Hindu concept of chakras. It does not correspond to the Kundalini or human genitalia. There is currently an alarming surge of pseudoscientific, occult-orientated authors, disingenuous practitioners of magic, misinformed priests and priestesses that are desperately attempting to merge every single aspect of the ancient melanated North African spiritual system of Kemet with the foreign spiritual systems of Hinduism, Buddhism, New Age religion, so-called alchemy, Wicca, the Western occult, Freemasonry, astrology, tarot cards, numerology, the Kabbalah, Gnosticism, Christianity, Islam, Native American spirituality, and multiculturalism. So you have all of this going on with people whenever they hit a stumbling block. I would say whenever they hit the threshold of their understanding of Kemet and they become too lazy to dig deep or learn under an actual professor or somebody that can actually read, write, translate, and scrutinize the script, the language, and understand the grammatical features, they plug in what they don't know about African Nile Valley culture with European and Hindu cultures. And what's problematic is it's always the interpretations of our invaders. The Hindus had a racial caste system. They did not identify with us. So often what we see is these practitioners, they're blending in everything.
Right. Wow. Okay.
And it leaves the students confused. Now, if you choose to merge various spiritual systems to create your own unique spiritual system, by all means do that. But as a student and somebody that really loves traditional African spirituality, African Nile Valley spiritual systems and their customs, it's important to learn what our ancestors intended first. Then if you want to change the definition, that's cool, because we're all entitled to do what we want. You choose your own spiritual adventure. Me personal, I like discipline. I like order. I like structure. I like to say what I mean and mean what I say. And that requires, it requires a lot of hard work and sacrifice and learning to admit that you made a mistake or made a misunderstanding new information and evidence came forth, and we move forward with it. There's no need for arguing, or never want people to think that somebody's superior to you just because they have privy to certain information or certain data and statistics and everything. It's all about us coming together, sharing, and improving.
Most definitely, man. This has been definitely enlightening. So I got a question though. This popped in my head because a lot of our people are now looking toward America, and they're saying, well, what does Kemet have to do with us? What is our, they'll say, oh, we're not from Kemet, we're not from Egypt. What does that have to do with us? Like, what, in your opinion?
Well, Kemet, first and foremost, let me move back to the screen. Can you see me now?
Yeah. Are you done? You want me to take it off?
Yeah, and I'll go back to it in a second or whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, I think Kemet is important because of the moral, ethical outlook. Even when you look at the term Kemet is not a reference. It's not a racial connotation. It's a reference to a Raporian land. The word Kemet, I got a whole African philosophy. I cover this topic for the first several chapters. So, we're going to get into this again and revisit. I'll show the glyph work or whatever. But when you say the word Kemet, the dialectical inverse of Kemet, if you were just to spell it backwards or whatever in a different dialect in Kemet, upper, lower Kemet, is Mahet, which means an oasis. It's a reference to a place with water. So the word Kemet is a reference to a land with irrigable water. So the primary foundation of Kemet, the confederacy of African families that came together and wanted to nation build, was to provide food, clothing, and shelter for their children. Let's get that straight. Let's stop playing games and being immature and reckless. The foundation of anyone claiming to be spiritual is to provide for their family and their children. If you think out of that, that's pure stupidity. If your children are not provided for, you're not spiritual. I don't play that debate. If you cannot feed the community, if you cannot provide your community, if you do not have potable water that you can drink without getting malaria, you're not spiritual. So the primary focus on Kemet is an irrigable land, an oasis, a place where you can come and raise children, a place where you don't have to migrate. You can place roots. You can sit down and have generations, and you're not wandering because you have potable water, you have irrigation. Now you can sit down, develop crops. You can bring in other confederations, other families, and you slowly but surely turn into a confederacy that's on its approach to a nation state, a city state or whatever. And this is how we build nations or whatever. You have to provide, if you want to be a sovereign, you have to provide the necessities of life. Being a sovereign isn't an exercise in arrogance and ego. Being a sovereign is an exercise in having the outlook of a father or a mother, and you're taking care of your children, except for it extends to the greater community. So what the ideal behind a sovereign is to be able to provide food, clothing, shelter, food, clothing, water, the foundational provisions. So if you're ever cut off, you can do for self, you can provide for self, you have a foundation. And with that foundation of being able to do and provide for self, you always have the possibility to trade, to network, or that is always open or whatever. But when we look at the term Kemet, it's a toponym. Toponyms are never based off of a racial identity, especially a rigid racial identity that was forged with the intent of converting a natural citizen into chattel property.
All right. I got you. Okay. Well, I mean, I just wanted to throw that out there because, like, a lot of our brothers, conscious community, they're like, oh man, we're not from Kemet. We don't have nothing to do with Kemet. Why are we studying Kemet or Africa? Because You know, they're making a claim that they're from America, and I'm not. That's a whole nother show, right? I mean,
it's a whole even that topic because we do have. I'm working on the text, but we do have the genetic data. Well, I have the genetic data to show and prove that we do have pharaohs with predominant tropical West African DNA. So we do have pharaohs. If you look at their genetic lineage, if you take the samples of their DNA, they're West Africans. So I don't understand I have a whole book about that where I'm merging the tree of life is merging with Bantu. So the tree of life principles, I'm gonna show all the West African, Central African, Bantu ethics, and we're gonna show how those mesh and everything.
I got you.
Yeah, but you know, it's a great legacy. So although we're primarily from Western Central Africa, we still carry on. Like when you look at the Yoruba, you look at the Ga people, Chaluba speakers, to our Chaluba Bantu speakers, they carry on the language all the way. Many of them, if you look at your Chaluba speakers, many of them even still carry on the hair grooming traditions. We can go out and right around Northern Africa, we can look at the Beja people, and they still use the clarified butter or the ghee to adorn their hair and treat their hair and have the long locks hair or whatever. They still use some of the traditional hairstyles of Kenya. I got a text showing that how like a lot of these related languages, they carry on the grooming, they carry on some of the spiritual traditions. In African philosophy, I get into showing you how, like, even if you're a practitioner of Vodun, I show you how your shrine, some of your sacred symbols and all of this, I can show you in Kemet long before that happened and where they come together, where it's a carrying on a tradition. For some reason, in our experience here in America, there has been this push to make it seem like Africans are different races. We're of different nationalities, but there's truly only one race, anatomically modern human beings. And the European has this habit of forming a dichotomy out of human beings. So, you know, our African ancestry is just as important, but we do find pharaohs with a strong tropical West African ancestry. And I plan to get on that in the future and everything. I plan on publishing those findings and everything, because I don't see a lot of that. And that book particularly deals with the argument of why do you have Americans trying to claim Kemet? And it's not an identity crisis, because studying Kemet, it puts you at the crux of the greatest minds Africa had to offer, because in that Nile Valley, it was a beacon. So you had the greatest minds from all over. So although it's Kemet, you still had the Bakanda in there, and the Bakanda were amazing doctors, and they could set broken bones and things of this nature, even several thousand years ago. So you have this rich tradition of amazing, brilliant Africans from all over coming. So it's just like when we look in today in modern times, that's just like saying, well, there's only Caucasians in New York. There's nobody else. There's no other ethnicities. There's no other race. All throughout the rise and fall of New York, there's only been one group of people there, and how dare anybody claim that any other people made a contribution to New York? Because we all know New York's not ethnically diverse. There's only one group of people in New York, right? In all the existence of New York, in all the existence of California, there's only been one group of people there. And there's no way these slaves could ever be anywhere else but at the bottom of these slave ships. And that's just the mentality. As African Americans, or however you want it, Moors or whatever, there's one identity they want to give you at the bottom of the slave ship, anywhere but where there's greatness and intelligence. And to be honest, there's no need for, as being descendants of Western and Central Africa, there's no need to really try to invade upon the space of Kemet, because our tradition in West Africa is equally as amazing. The Dahomey, and we have an amazing tradition that is on par with Kemet. with science, technology, metallurgy, medicine. There's no need to have a competition when it's just that's like the debate between, who's the best? Is it Michael Jordan or LeBron? How about this? How about we have these eras of great Black men dominating, and they're all laying bricks to build an amazing building that is not finished yet. So as opposed to, you know what I'm saying, that it's different ways you can look at it. And that's how I look at it. When we look at what we did in West Africa, whether it be in Togo, Benin, whatever, our tradition is amazing. Our artistry, I mean, there's a reason why when you look at the Smithsonian, all these amazing art institutes throughout Europe, why they have seized, stolen, and are holding hostage the artifacts and the artworks of West Africa. And I've had the privilege. I've had the privilege of going to some of the art exhibits, whether when they shift them to Texas or Cali or whatever. Some of my other works I use as primary sources. Some of the stuff, the artifacts, and the amazing art and treasure trove of amazing arts and textiles and tapestries we have made, and they're making a living off of that. But I was able to go and take some pictures and incorporate into my text and show some of the connections or whatever. But yeah, we have an amazing tradition. As African descendants or whatever, we're one. And that always disturbed me, that argument about, well, you West African this, you West, and then I'm like, do you not know about the West African pharaohs? Okay. You're speaking from a place of confusion and ignorance. That's okay. Right. But you know what I'm saying? So
that's what we here to clear up the confusion. Clear up the confusion.
But yes, that is a very strange misconception. You have a West African presence in Kemet, and it's still encoded in language. Even Sir Wallace Budge, if you look at his Seminole text, his original text or whatever, as they began to methodology and systematically decode Medu Neter, one of the first things he noted and facts that he presented to his colleagues was that Medu Neter was undoubtedly related to Bantu languages, West African languages, the moral ethic, the philosophy, the outlook, the traditions, the rituals, the way shrines are constructed, the way deities are adorned, the way offerings, the way animal sacrifices are offered to deity are the same. And I get into my last book later on. I get into how certain animal sacrifice rituals, how they're applied, how they're used. I show temple depictions of animal sacrifice to nature compared to what's going on in Vodun or whatever in a traditional West African sense, not what we're practicing here in the Americas, but that juju going on over there and everything. I get into that or whatever. So there is a cross section between Kemet, because like I said, it was a hub, it was a beacon. So you see a cross section where there's traffic to West Africa, Central Africa, and even amongst themselves. One of the titles that Kemet used for themselves was Into, which is corresponds to the word Bantu. So when you the term Bantu, the classification, because the word Bantu is a linguistic term. It's not what the people identify. So when you say the word Bantu, it's what linguists use for that particular branch.
For language,
whatever. But
so
within that term Bantu that we use as a classifier for your West African languages, our peoples in Kemet use that same term to identify themselves as Bantu speakers. So we see that in primary sources of them firsthandly identifying themselves. And also when we go further in their primary source attestations, they speak of themselves as being from the Great Lakes region.
Okay. I wanted to address this question from Nimrod, I believe. And he referring to something we said or you said, and he says, so Kemet doesn't mean black people, you say?
No, it never had. See, what we have to remember, and this is what we're dealing with. When this argument was struck in the early 1900s, you had a situation where originally you're dealing with, was it right around the civil rights time? So even when you look at some of the older interviews with our great ancestors, Dr. Ben, he would speak of times where he would be harassed and not be allowed to go into certain places to conduct academic research or whatever. So at the time, when you see great African scholars, even such as Sheikh Anta Diop, he came and presented that theory because what he wanted to do was argue against the racial stereotypes of European scholars, saying that it was initially light-skinned Asiatics, light-skinned biracial peoples and white people that colonized Kemet, established Kemet, and later Africans, lowly Africans, came in and they civilized us, and we inherited what they created or whatever. So Kemet meaning black land, that was us reclaiming what had been taken to us and handed over to the Arab and the European or whatever. Because when Egypt is just nothing but an Arab republic after they conquered us or whatever. Okay, I almost lost my state. What was I talking about? I lost my
no, we just talking about Kemet doesn't mean black people.
Mean black land.
So,
okay.
So ultimately, Kemet.
So now,
what he said, black people. So Kemet means.
So that
what?
was the argument that was put up just so we could reclaim Kemet as a black name. Now, Sheikh Anta Diop put this argument in the, am I mistaken, for the United Nations. It was under UNESCO. It was during the Cairo Symposium. If you want to look up when this really got first put into the argument, into our daily conversation of Kemet meaning black land and reinforced by African scholars, was under Sheikh Anta Diop in the Cairo Symposium. And in that symposium, if you pull up the transcripts, you can go to the United Nations under UNESCO, and you will find in it that the African scholars at the end of the symposium, they disagreed with them. Sheikh Anta Diop had to later admit it because they checked him in that Cairo Symposium. Toponyms, Africans do not think along racial European terms. Africans do not look at themselves under these, you're black, you're a black man. And I work with Africans. I have African friends, Ghana, Senegal, March. They don't identify as, Negro, black, color. They identify with their nationality, their national identity. They have a flag. They have, a constitution behind them or whatever, and the status that affords them or whatever. So what we're dealing with Kemet, again, I got a whole book I dedicated to this. I would have to go and show you, because the term Kemet is a reduction. So to answer this question, the more fuller term for Kemet is Kemet Nuwit. Now, if you look at the Nuwit part of Kemet, that is it's reduced in the spelling, but part of it is a circle with an X, and that's one of your older symbols for an irrigated land. So even when you spell Kemet, you're looking at old Medu Neter references to lands that can be irrigated and supply water. And when you spell the word Kemet backwards, Mahet, it means an oasis. So I have a whole that would be a great presentation, because the first 2 chapters of my book is dedicated to that, redefining the like when we use the term Afro-Asiatic, that's a misnomer. That's a very misleading term and everything. It's not even really a real language family or whatever. It's a European construct or whatever. But yes, so when we look at these arguments, even when the great ancestor Sheikh Anta Diop put them forward and in all of your major symposiums, because ideas like this are put forward in your major symposiums, which usually take place in your Cairo, Switzerland, things of this nature or whatever. And you can get the transcripts as, just an onlooker if you want to or whatever from UNESCO or whatever. But this argument, Sheikh Anta Diop, when pressed and asked to provide primary source evidence, he could not provide it. He could show you the term Kim meaning black as in color, but he could not show you a spelling grammatically as a toponym or a nationality with any reference to a racial connotation or whatever. And I get into showing, like, if you're actually using the term Kim to mean black, in my my latest text, I show you what the actual glyphs look like. So when you're saying black as a quote unquote color, there are specific accompanying glyphs to let you know that this is an indicator to race or whatever, or the color specifically, as opposed to a different concept or whatever. But that would be good, because I could pull up the metanetroglyphs itself, and I could show you, break it down through all the phases of the languages, and I can show you other neighboring African cultures that also recognize Kemet as an oasis. Even when you look at the cognate or the related terms to Kemet, when we go to Sumeria or Babylon, and when we go to the primary source text in cuneiform that have corresponding terms for Kemet and Sumer, we see that the word in Sumer for Kemet, Kiduru, is also a reference to a wet, irrigated land. So even our Sumerian brothers, their attestations of Kemet, the corresponding, the cognate terms for Kemet, are a reference to a land with irrigated water where you can settle down and you can actually build a nation. Because when we say the word Kemet, we're dealing, though, in the classification in the Semitic language, we're dealing with toponyms, meaning they're specifically terms that deal with a city, state, nation, nationality. And our ancestors have never sat down and presented themselves to other sovereign nations or other civilizations as black. What black? What? How do you present yourself? You're claiming to be a sovereign. You're claiming to be a king. You're claiming to be a queen, but you present yourself as something that can be found in a box of crayons. That make what status does this crayon you're claiming to be have? When you go into court and you're putting your status on record, how far is being a crayon going to get you? I can look in a box of Crayolas and find a black crayon, a brown crayon. Show me any other group. If you're saying Kemet means, but show me another group of people with an advanced civilization that had established sovereignty, an established aristocrat that identify themselves by meager, low-life racial classifications based solely on skin tone that cannot be linked with anything.
Okay.
Unless you have a master, a slave master.
Right. I got you.
Yeah, black. But the easiest way to that answer is the term black. Those are terms used by people that are owned by somebody else.
Yeah, those weren't really terms for that back then. Used
right. We never use those. Yeah. People retrofit. They bring the Europeans' mentality, the Europeans' classification, because even the concept of black or even being white or that's a new phenomenon.
Right.
Even white people calling themselves white, that's fairly new in our vocabulary.
Exactly. Okay, so he had a question. He got a couple questions. He said he was confused. It says, I'm confused. It was supposed to be read backwards. So talking about the word Kemet, was the word Kemet to be read backwards?
Okay. See, what happened is, and I talk about this in my methodology, the actual lexicon of Kemet, before you get European, Asian influence and invasions, you have a very small lexicon of terms, and the terms have multiple. One word could have multiple meanings. Like, let's see here, bye. I could be saying bye like goodbye, or bye like I'm by something, and things of this nature. You have multiple words that have these numerous meanings. Like, okay, I could say red. That can mean the color red or the act of reading. I read this book. It's red and red. So you have a lot of homonyms in Kemet. You have a lot of terms that sound just alike, but they have a different meaning. So with a reduced lexical inventory, a small amount of vocabulary terms, what you see is an abundance of homonyms. So it becomes extremely important to understand Medu Neter, the actual glyph work, so you can understand what each glyph means, the classifier glyphs, and what they're referring to, so you can understand. So if you look in a dictionary, you see a word and it'll be a 1, 2, 3 various definitions of the term. We use the classifier glyphs to say, oh, okay, this term is number 1 definition. This term is number 2 definition. When I see these 2 scrolls at the end of the term, oh, okay, that's number 3 definition.
Okay, so it'd be based on the context. Go ahead.
So when he said the word is the word, are we looking at the word Kemet backwards? No. Mahet,
I think what you were saying.
It's just a term that they created from Kemet.
Well, I was saying, okay, so when you had said when you take the word Kemet backwards, it spelled what now? It was
Mahet.
Mahet. So Mahet, you said, stood for oasis.
Yes, it's a reference. So it's showing that even when you look at the inverse of the word Kemet for the nation of Kemet, when you look at the inverse, it gives you clues as to the underlying meaning of the word outside of it being a toponym. So as a toponym, a title for a nation state, it Kemet, it's irrigable. But when you want to probe and scrutinize words in Medu Neter, there are always corresponding dialects. So although I'm giving you a term Kemet,
right
here, when I could be here in Atlanta part of Kemet, but then when I go up north, we got another variation of the term. It's because there were many Kemets, and this gets, there were many Kemets inside of Kemet.
So what that means? So what you mean?
Again, a Kemet is an oasis. It's a
okay, I got you. So it's many oases.
There were many
inside of
under the jurisdiction of Kemet.
Right.
You know, just like in the state of Ohio, we got a lot of cities up in that bad boy. But it's like every state. Every state has a Martin Luther King Drive, a Malcolm X Street or Malcolm X Boulevard that you should probably avoid. But they got it. You know what I'm saying? They got it. So that's what's going on there. But yeah, that Kemet has dual meanings or whatever. And even Kemet itself, that's a newer term for the land. I get into that in my text. Then they started using that term to like the 10th, 11th. That's a newer term that they actually use for the land anyway, after they became an organized confederation. So the term Kemet is very new.
I got you. Check.
But yes, that holding on to this term, black, this, black, that's and for many people, they can't let that go because that European controls their world outlook now. So the same way that European looks, that's how you gonna look at things. Some people to the day that they die, because that's how that European told you to think. That European said you identify as a crayon, a 3/5 human being, shadow property. You put some type of unprovable, unscientific classification on yourself. They can't even prove what a race is, where one begins and the other ends. So some people can't hold on to that. It has to be black, and I get it, because in here in Americas, our identity has been stripped from us, and a lot of people are so needy for our identity that it always has to be black this, black that, and he's the first black this, and she's the first. We're so worried about the color that we're not worried about being professional. We're not worried about being scientists. We're not worried about using proper method. We're worried about all the emotions, all the feelings, but there is a disconnect from being professional and, taking the time to make mistakes, acknowledge them, and let them go. And I think that's a hard problem with the community, is looking at something and saying, I looked at this like this for several years, but the information I've been provided with now allows me to elevate and let go. It's just like that old flip phone you used to have. It's over. That BlackBerry don't work no more. You gotta let it go. Yeah, they moved on to bigger, better thing. But our community, we hold on to a lot of misconceptions, pseudoscience, things of this nature.
Makes us feel good. Makes us feel
good. And this thing of having to point out, like with this comment, I think it had something to do with Black Oasis. My response,
Osiris.
Osiris. No, it had nothing to do with Asar.
Yeah, Asar. Yeah, that's the
Asar or Wasir. If you want to be technical from transliterations, it's WSR or whatever. So no, the term has nothing to do with Wasir. If you look at the glyphs, translate them, and learn what the actual glyphs mean, our ancestors were very specific. They don't need us to rewrite their language. They don't need us to make up stuff. And that's another thing in our community. We have a disconnect from our own elders. We have a disconnect from being taught things. We have a disconnect from being professional. So a lot of proper research methodology is lost if you have that outlook.
I don't think they know how to use proper methodology.
Right. I don't think it is because I've noticed in the years that I've done this, engaging the community, interacting with people, presentations, messenger, whatever, DMs, the average person, even those claiming to be priests, priestesses, master teachers, Kemetic yoga, when you press them, the more majority of them cannot read or write Medu Neter. They have no idea of what the glyphs mean. So what they do is they'll look at them, guess, and then come up with their own interpretation. And then they get in an echo chamber of yes men and yes women. Oh yeah, that make me feel good. So yeah, I'm gonna go along with it. So it's just like any other great myth. At one time, you had a period where people thought Sherlock Holmes really existed. They really believed the playwright. So it's like, I remember I was giving you this example of the movie to answer, just to build on, I think it has something to do with Osiris. The movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was a martial arts movie, came out a while ago with Chow Yun-Fat, Michelle Yeoh. And the gist of the movie was the search. They were trying to obtain the Jade Sword, this mythical sword. If the person who wielded it was a master, they could rule the world with an iron fist, and they gave them, this great power and everything. So because they were women, it talked about the troubles that women went through being martial artists. And a lot of times the heads of the dojo, they didn't want to let them be teachers and branch out and move. They kind of held them down. So they broke away from it. And then they stole the master's sacred teachings, right? So he had all the sacred teachings written on the scroll, the secret art forms of martial arts, some of the most deadly and dangerous techniques. So they took that on them and learned as they went. And it got to a point in the movie where the female star, who was the young and up and coming martial artist, the soon to be master, she was because the lady at the time was her nanny, but she was also an excellent martial artist. So they were going on adventures, they're fighting. And it got to a point where they had their backs against the wall. And then the nanny, who was a martial artist, looked at her. They were in the middle of combat. And she was like, wait a minute, hold up. You're standing up against some of the most deadly fighters. And she was like, I've noticed that as I've started to reach my ceiling, you're starting to take off. And she stopped and she was like, that's because you were only looking at the pictures of the teachings. You could not read or write the teachings of the master, so you could only rise this far. I on the other hand took the time to learn how to read and write the language, and I deciphered the text. So that was the story at hand. There's a difference between somebody who's just looking at the pictures, totally illiterate and clueless, and doing the best they can do with the information. Excuse me, get some water.
Yes, sir.
So there's a difference between someone who is literate, can see the information in front of them, read it, cross-reference, fact check, outsource the information to a team, versus somebody who's just, it looks like this. It looks like that. It looks like that. Well, right. it worked out this first. I guess I made up something. It kind of sort of worked this first. Well, so I'm gonna roll with it. I'm gonna keep on going down this road of just lookership, not scholarship, lookership. You just look at something, it looks like this, it rhymes with that, it kind of sort of blends in. Well, I'm gonna go with it. It must be. So that's what we're dealing with, or whatever.
I got you.
As opposed to taking out the time to, because once you learn how to like just the most basic understanding of it, it gives you a more humble grounding where you want to sit down and learn what the ancestors had to say to you directly. And that's something our culture, because illiteracy is an issue in the culture. High illiteracy rates just with English alone. So when you extend that to learning another language, a dead language or whatever, it can be problematic at times, trying to unlearn bad habits and go into different information that may seem like it's offensive to what you have learned prior.
Check. So
again, here we go again. So the Sumerians call themselves blackheads. Those are just references that scholars use indirectly. Please show me a primary source text written in cuneiform. Please show me an official document written by a king in Sumer where he makes a royal address of himself as a blackhead. Please show it to me. I would love to see your primary source information that's carved out in cuneiform with a royal official addressing themselves as black. I look forward to seeing that primary source carved in stone.
Check.
Anything else you don't respect because it's just coming from you. So whatever official you're saying said that, please show me from the time period you're talking about and show me the source work, and I look forward to it. But just like I tell everybody, never believe what I say, do your research, and then vice versa. I don't believe nothing you say till you can come professional. If you have a claim, show me the source and the evidence that you have seen directly of the Sumerians officially referring to themselves when addressing another nation, when addressing another sovereign, where they reduce themselves to nappy blackheads or whatever you're claiming. Yes, we understand the term blackhead or whatever, but I would love to see an official document, not out of the mythological account or something like that. So when you say the word blackhead, show it to me in Sumerian. What was that? What is the actual term in the actual Sumerian language that you're saying means blackhead that they use in the actual primary source text? I got some amazing books on Sumer too. I always like to ask where people get their sources from so I can get an idea of how they formulated their view.
Right. So like I was gonna say something about the blackheads, but it's slipped my mind. He had another comment too, and we're gonna wrap it up too though. But I'm glad that we got dialogue from the people in the audience. He said you just said scholars said it heard it from them.
Nah,
so go ahead.
They don't identify them. There's no toponym in Sumer that means black land or black people. And when you look at the actual terms, just like in Kemet, people use the term, well, they were Kemetic, blah, blah, blah. That the people themselves in their natural indigenous language chose to call themselves the Ramech, which is a reference to just average, ordinary people. Almost like, what is that song, Arrested Development? I'm everyday people. That's what the Ramech roughly translates to. I didn't just say scholars said that. I asked you to show me what scholars you said saying that. I said loosely, not as a identifying term of their nationality or who they were.
Right, because I'm thinking that the scholars
like
are trying to interpret it.
Right, they're giving
from their racial thinking, and they're putting those terms on that.
Yeah, they're retrofitting. So when I say that, they're retroactively bringing their just like how they would go in archaeological sites, and they would say, well, based off of this cranial shape, based off of this nasal cavity, well, it couldn't have been black. It couldn't have been, when we know that Africans produce every phenotype you can imagine. We have broad noses. narrow noses, full lips, thin lips, coarse hair, thin, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. So, okay. I mean, brother. So let me, before we jump off here, was there anything else that you wanted to deal with about the Ankh before we jump off here? I know my brother
That'd
got
be a whole nother because we can get into like what the Ankh means and ritual artifacts, how ritual artifacts that the Nisut Biddy use, how they were constructed. Because you also have a phenomenon called paronymy, and this is how you use wordplay to translate wordplay into constructing rituals, temple rituals, ceremonial, magical rituals, and things of this nature. So the grammar and the structure of Kemet, it is amazing. So just by using certain glyph spellings for certain terms, that later inspired certain ritual artifacts that Nisut biddies and they use in the per Ankh in your secret society or higher learning institutions and things of this nature.
right. So we getting some
Oh,
questions.
what did you say? Does the Ankh mean mirror still? Good question. Yes. Again, as I was saying, the term Ankh has multiple meanings, and one of the meanings for Ankh is mirror. And I deal with that in my book a little bit further. I get into that. So yes, that is one definition of the term Ankh, but it's spelled differently from what I'm speaking on. So yes, one of the definitions of Ankh is a mirror. And that mirror was often used by one of the pharaohs, Akhenaten. He had ritual. I deal with that in my book. Matter of fact, hold on.
Yeah,
Let me see.
Pull it up.
Yeah, I pull it up. That's a great picture. Let's see here.
I'm gonna add you in.
Give me a second. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Y'all, please thumbs up. Please like this video. Smash that like button.
Okay.
We need it. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate donations. Any donations, I appreciate them. Much love and respect. We getting into the building. We've been getting into the nitty gritty. I appreciate. Well, how you say your name? Mad Guru. Mad.
Okay. Am I on
Guru.
share?
Mad Guru. I appreciate the question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to try to share. Let's see here. Let me get in here.
Yeah, you share it again.
Okay, let me get in here because that was a really good question. So let me go in here. Boom. Share.
Yeah, we got some people that's looking at things from another perspective. Go ahead.
Right, because I'm not trying to make anybody angry or drive nobody crazy or I'm just sharing here. Let's see. Let me go for because that was a great question. Let's get into that. What he said. So let's go on top. We can easily see that each end of let's see. This connection.
All right. Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
I got you on here. I'm about to put the full screen. Okay.
Okay, so now I'm skipping some information. That's why it's definitely important because I break down how the language works. So now
y'all go get the book. Y'all go get the book. If y'all want all that, go get the book. But he breaking it down. Go ahead.
So the term at hand is paronymy, which is a word derived from the same root as another word, a word that just sounds like another word. Paronymy involves words which are almost homonyms, but they actually have slight differences in spelling and have a different meaning. The linguistic feature of paronymy is ingeniously used in the field of fine arts to create important Black African cultural artifacts and items used to perform important spiritual rituals and magical operations. So again, this linguistic feature that we're about to get into of how you use words and create other words that sound like the foundational word. For example, the word
He froze up. Y'all. Hopefully he'll be back real quick. I think he froze, and hopefully he'll unfreeze. He's about. Hey, you know how y'all know how it go when they really about to delve into something. something always happens. So hopefully he'll be able to reconnect back on the screen and finish that off. But I do see that Magura has another question out here. I just had, not a question, but you have a statement. You're saying that I just have my memories that were here before my folks started people training. It's good to see that some are willing to see and not just look. And that's the thing, is that a lot of us, haven't really done the study. And just like when you were stuck in Christianity, or when you were stuck in these other religions, most people haven't studied. You see what I'm saying? So let me see what he said.
Man, my internet crashed on me.
Oh, okay. I got you. Well, if you can get back, I'm gonna close it off, man, and then we can get back to it.
Did any of the mirror stuff show up, or did it cut off before I could?
It was
here talking, and I'm like, what the fuck?
It was there. It was there. So I got, okay. So what I'm gonna do? We'll get back to it. So y'all, I'm gonna hit you back in a minute, bro. Okay. Peace. All right, y'all. So look, his internet crashed. They was trying to get us, man. So I'm gonna end the show pretty much right in a few. He was getting into it, y'all. Y'all got to watch some of the old. If you came in late, please go back and watch the earlier part of the video, because he did talk about the mirror, right? So before we get out of here, though, I'm gonna show this ad.
Power in the melanin, she glows. Unified like Malcolm when we close. Pushing through the struggle, yeah, we chose. Solid as a rock, I love it grows. Speaking wisdom just like Dr. Umar knows. Dripping culture in our stance, it shows. On the front lines where that passion roars. Building empires, Kevin Samuels goals. Sitting at the table, he proposed. Melanated love, in America it flows.
All right, you ain't lying, Matt Guru. Hey, he was getting into it, but like I say, I mean, we're gonna be doing more videos. Y'all can see some of his older videos that we've done. Me and brother Amen Maat Ra have done a few videos before. We haven't done a lot in recently, but we got him out there. He did a real good video. The last video that we did is a real good video as well. So y'all might want to go back on the page. But I appreciate y'all for liking the video, subscribing, and like my man said, Nimrod, peace till next time. Tutanana. Peace.